Peruvian President Martin Vizcarra is to approach Congress to ask for a state of emergency to be declared in the public ministry. The decision comes after the country's Attorney General, Pedro Chavarri, removed two key investigators from the Odebrecht corruption case. But just about an hour ago, the replacement prosecutors rejected their appointments. A state of emergency will allow Vizcarra to make changes to personnel who can advance the investigation.
I urge the Congress to treat this matter with utmost urgency. As the case requires it, if it is not dealt with urgently, then we will put forward a confidence motion, because the fight against corruption is the #1 issue in the government.
On their part, the now former members of the special team for the Lava Jato case say they will challenge their removal.
We're going to file an appeal against the illegal decision of the Attorney General of the nation as soon as we can, so that this decision may be reconsidered by the Board of Supreme Attorneys, in which he should not participate.
And the foundations the prosecutor of the nation has exposed in the resolution are fake. They do not conform to reality. On the contrary, they are intent to favor criminal organizations' interests that are subject of investigation by me.
On Tuesday night, citizens in Lima held a demonstration to show their outrage at the Attorney General's decision. People are demanding that Chavarri be dismissed and the two prosecutors removed from the case be reinstated.
I am outraged about how the majority of the population is losing these investigators, Domingo Perez and Rafael Vela, because of a decision taken by the prosecutor Chavarri, which strikes a strong blow against the fight against corruption.
Changing prosecutors a few days after signing the agreement with Odebrecht risks what has been agreed with them.
Our correspondent in Lima, Jaime Herrera, brings us more details.
Today at 1 p.m. local time, President Martin Vizcarra will be in Congress to present a project to be debated within the next couple of days in order to declare an emergency in the public ministry. He said that the multiple demonstrations across the nation are absolutely right. The issue stems from the dismissal of a team of prosecutors who investigated political figures such as Keiko Fujimori and former President Alan Garcia. Vizcarra's project seeks to demand the resignation of the Attorney General, Pedro Chavarri, and also the public prosecutors, so they can be replaced by transitional alternates. In 3 months, they could elect a new Attorney General. The President's decision is considered an urgent measure to fight corruption, since he was attending the swearing-in ceremony of the new Brazilian President Jair Bolsonaro. After the protests erupted, Vizcarra decided to go back to Peru and take action against this new legal scandal.
On Tuesday, Jair Bolsonaro took office as the new president of Brazil. During his speech, Bolsonaro told Congress he would restore order in Brazil. He also spoke about family values, saying he will fight against the ideology of gender.
I take this solemn moment to call all deputies to help me in this mission of restoration and recovery of the homeland, by finally freeing it from the yoke of corruption, criminality, economic responsibility, and ideological submission.
Vamos unir o povo.
We will unite the people, value the family, respect religions and our Judeo-Christian traditions, fight the ideology of gender while preserving our values. Brazil will once again become a country free of ideological chains.
On the same day, the imprisoned former president, Luiz Inácio Lula da Silva, sent a letter saying 2019 is the year of resistance and struggle. Lula said it's time to fight to stop people from being hurt by the new far-right government's policies. He also said they can arrest a person, but they cannot jail our ideas and our future. And as Bolsonaro was taking his oath of office, hundreds of people also gathered outside the police headquarters in Curitiba, where Lula is being held. They threw balloons and flowers and demanded the release of their former president. Several leaders of left-wing parties have said they are discussing strategies to fight against the rise of fascism in Brazil.
For me, Bolsonaro's inauguration means that the election was a farce. It was a fraud. They barred the candidate who was leading. And this was done by a justice system that is completely purchased.
This is a moment when we have to return to our origins. We have to strengthen our bases. It is a period of dialogue in which we have to explain to society what is happening. But more than anything, we have to stay united and strong.
Among those present for Jair Bolsonaro's swearing-in ceremony was the U.S. Secretary of State Mike Pompeo. After the ceremony, Pompeo met the new Brazilian Foreign Minister Ernesto Araújo. During a press conference, they stressed the opportunities they both see for their nations to strengthen ties.
We believe that the opportunity between President Trump, President Bolsonaro, and our two teams creates a truly transformative opportunity for our two nations, for our two peoples.
And the Venezuelan Vice Minister of Foreign Affairs has sent out a statement directed at the U.S. Secretary of State Mike Pompeo. Via Twitter, the Vice Minister reminded Pompeo that Venezuela is an irrevocably free and sovereign country, and that they should stop their insolent interference and put an end to the U.S.'s erratic and absurd behavior. This after Pompeo visited Brazil on Tuesday for Jair Bolsonaro's swearing-in ceremony, just as his meeting with the Colombian President Ivan Duque is set to take place. Privatization, austerity, and the extension of the agricultural and mining frontier onto indigenous lands and natural reserves. These are some of the priorities of the new government in Brazil. People want solutions to the economic crisis left by President Michel Temer. But do they think that these policies will achieve them? Our team in Sao Paulo went to find out.
With 12% of the population unemployed and a similar proportion in informal work, the new government faces the challenge of kick-starting the economy.
We need a government that will govern better and make us happier. Look at the shops. Nobody is buying anything.
Despite the failure of President Temer's neoliberal policies, the new economy minister, Paulo Guedes, is promising to take this approach further. One of his first aims will be to seek support in Congress for a pension reform, one modeled on Chile's private pension scheme, introduced by the Pinochet dictatorship.
All governments think of themselves, not of the people. We have a big problem with this new government, which wants to take away all our rights. With their proposals, the workers' right to retire and decent life is disappearing.
Bolsonaro's promise to criminalize the homeless and landless movements. In a country, a housing deficit of 6 million homes suggests social conflicts are set to increase.
Under Bolsonaro, we will not see the same kind of democracy, which was already limited. He wants to outlaw social movements. The challenge for this year will certainly be for the movements to resist and keep defending people's rights.
Minorities have a slogan for what lies ahead. Don't let go of anyone's hand.
We will resist. We know that with Bolsonaro we will face many attacks against us LGBT, against blacks and the indigenous, who are the true owners of the land. There will be all kinds of repression against people who are already oppressed. So nobody should let go of anyone's hand. We need to be united.
The decision by opposition lawmakers to stay away from Bolsonaro's swearing-in shows that the new government's plans will not get a free ride on the streets.
I would really like to be optimistic and think that the government will be reasonable. But I know it won't be. It's a corrupt, authoritarian, and incapable government. Bolsonaro will throw Brazil into a social and economic crisis, set the place on fire, and it won't last a year like that.
Brazil is entering a new phase of the neoliberal experience and a political break with the last 30 years of democratization. 2019 will show whether the strength developed in the struggle for social rights will be enough to confront the return to power of those schooled by the military and civilian dictatorship.
Nicaragua has responded to the decision of the OAS Secretary General to promote the application of the Inter-American Democratic Charter. The move is being called unprecedented and illegal in a statement by the Foreign Affairs Minister. The application of the Charter would allow the OAS's Permanent Council to take, quote, necessary diplomatic initiatives in the event of a democratic rupture. The minister's letter appealed for the support of OAS states to reject Amalga's request, saying the document was intended to be applied while respecting the principles of non-intervention, sovereignty, and self-determination. Close to 400 people have died while trying to cross the US-Mexico border in 2018. According to the organization Lost Migrants Project, 376 migrants lost their lives trying to make their way into the United States. Sadly, a 7-year-old girl and an 8-year-old boy were counted among those deaths. The grim figure also includes refugees and asylum seekers. In the past few months, thousands of Central Americans fleeing hardship in their homelands arrived at the US-Mexico border. We'll take a short break now. More news in a minute, so stay with us. Welcome back. Thousands turned out in Cuba on Tuesday to celebrate the 60th anniversary of the Cuban Revolution. The main event took place at the Santa Efigenia Cemetery in Santiago, where the leader of the revolution, Fidel Castro, is laid to rest. The former president and Secretary General of the Communist Party, Raul Castro, said Cuba remained an example of independence and social justice, and he called for the release of Brazil's Lula.
Again, they're accusing Cuba, when it has been shown that foreign debt, the uncontrolled flow of migrants, the plunder of natural resources are the results of domination by transnational companies in our continent. The force of the truth has exposed those lies, and history has put the facts and those responsible for them in their proper place. The only thing that the Cuban Revolution and the epic story written by this people can be blamed for is the example it has given of total independence, victorious resistance, social justice, altruism, and internationalism.
A South African sailor has been rescued off the coast of the Dominican Republic. He had been adrift in his yacht for 2 days. The yacht's generator failed, leaving the vessel without power. Victor Hemtel, the boat's lone occupant, was unable to steer the vessel after the engine stalled. He was spotted by a shipping boat and rescued. The yacht is being towed to Trinidad. Trinidad is where all the yachties go. Jamaica's ban on single-use plastics is now in force, and manufacturers, importers and distributors have been advised to forbid the single-use plastic bags and disposable plastic straws. The measure was recommended by the National Compliance and Regulatory Authority. The ban also applies to plastic bags of 24 by 24 inches in dimension. Retailers with small stocks of plastic bags can continue using them until their alternative packaging shipments arrive. The Speaker of the National Assembly of St. Kitts and Nevis has been accused of colluding with the government to block a no-confidence debate against the Prime Minister last week. The opposition accused the House Speaker of dismissing the motion. It was filed against Prime Minister Timothy Harris after the opposition accused him of putting his family and friends in key government positions. Shifting gears now, with 2019 declared as the year of festivals in the Caribbean, it's no surprise that the festivities have already kicked into high gear in parts of the region. The city of Nassau celebrated New Year's Day in true Bahamian style. Revelers took to the streets for the annual Junkanoo parade. Large groups displayed elaborate costumes, dancing to the beat of goat skin drums. The festival is named after Junkanoo, an African tribal chief who demanded the right to celebrate with his people during the days of slavery. In other news, the Electoral Commission in the Democratic Republic of Congo has begun counting the votes cast in the recent general election. Tallying centers across the country took the ballots from polling stations to begin the official count. Initial results are expected by Friday. The counting is taking place as the government has shut down all access to the internet, saying they fear early results may be leaked. But citizens and members of the opposition are viewing the shutdown with some degree of suspicion.
Talking about voting trends in the West, people understand this, but here, if someone has seen that one candidate is first in 10 centuries, then they go off to do something else, and then when they comes back, if the results are different, there is risk of misinterpreting this. That is why we want to give results progressively and after receiving consolidated results from the centers.
It proves they are hiding things that are not very clear, because people went to express themselves by voting. But why should the government cut the internet? It does not bode well in relation to the wishes that the population expressed.
A demonstration has been staged in Madagascar's capital against the outcome of the presidential elections. Thousands of opposition supporters took to the streets to protest the victory of the former president, Andry Rajoelina, in last week's polls. This as the country's electoral court is reviewing a petition by the opposition leader challenging Rajoelina's win under fraud allegations. We'll take a short break now and we'll have more news in a few. Welcome back. The death toll following the collapse of an apartment building in Russia has risen to 22 people, with 19 people still missing. Chances of finding more survivors alive continue to fade. On Tuesday, a baby was rescued alive after spending 35 hours beneath rubble. The apartment building collapsed due to a gas explosion on Monday, trapping dozens. Our correspondent in Moscow, Hansel Ora, brings us more details.
The death toll in this tragic accident has risen to 22 victims. It is expected that in the coming hours we'll find out more about the situation of those who remain in hospital. Among the hospitalized is an 11-month-old baby who was found alive under the rubble. Doctors say the baby is recovering, although he remains in critical condition. 2 other minors were also among the victims. The explosion caused the collapse of a building, destroying 35 homes where around 120 people lived. Russian President Vladimir Putin is involved in the investigation to figure out the cause of the accident.
The Chinese President Xi Jinping has said that the Taiwan question will definitely end with national rejuvenation and the principles of peaceful reunification. He called on Chinese people on both sides of the Taiwan Strait to make joint efforts to seek national reunification. Xi said the principles of one country, two systems are the best approach to realizing national reunification.
The future of Taiwan lies in national reunification, and the well-being of our Taiwan compatriots is linked to national rejuvenation. Peaceful development of cross-strait relations is the correct road to maintaining cross-strait peace. Promoting cross-strait common development and benefiting compatriots on both sides of the strait. Peaceful development of cross-strait relations should be pushed forward, maintained and shared by compatriots on both sides of the strait.
A series of landslides in Indonesia killed at least 15 people on New Year's Day. At least 20 people went missing in Western Java, and heavy rain buried 30 houses. The bad weather conditions had forced rescuers to suspend the search on Tuesday. In 2018, Indonesia suffered a series of earthquakes and tsunamis that killed more than 3,000 people. And the death toll from landslides and floods in the central Philippines has reached 85, according to officials. 25,000 people have been displaced because of the devastation triggered by the rain. Search and rescue operations have been hampered by continuous heavy rains in the Bicol and eastern Visayas regions. Every year, about 20 tropical cyclones hit the Philippines, which destroy crops and infrastructure and takes a toll on human life. All across Europe, 2019 marks the 20th anniversary since the euro started to be used in all financial markets. As the continent has suffered through many crises since then, let's look back to 20 years that were positive for some and negative for others.
The euro began to be used on the 1st of January 1999 in all financial markets. The idea was to have a common currency for a common market. However, it took another year for the currency to reach citizens' pockets.
The capacity of keeping prices stable is very important, as is the ability of having low interest rates and being able to finance the economy and have common structures which strengthen the European Union's common market.
According to the European Union, these macroeconomic strengths do not minimize benefits for EU citizens.
People notice the benefits when they have to travel to another country. In that case, they do not have to purchase another currency. And not only citizens, but also companies. These companies do not have to suffer the risks that stem from currency exchanges.
However, the euro has had many critics from outside institutions. Those critics mainly focus on the financial policies that come with its use in a continent where speculation runs rampant.
In Europe, conservative governments are the norm. Financial interests of big multinational companies are above citizens. The interests of these actors are cared for more than the interests of people.
During the 2008 economic crisis, some countries, such as Greece, come to consider not using the euro anymore. They were reacting against austerity measures imposed by the European Council. Many criticize the lack of common budgets that will prevent the widening gap between rich and poor.
There is a minority who has become richer over the last 10 years, and a vast majority of people, more than 3/4 of the population, who are poorer today than 10 years ago. I will say that happened in all countries of the European Union.
The result, 20 years after the launch of the euro, is a bittersweet feeling. Experts stress the importance of having a common currency for 340 million people, but they also highlight that the euro is the second most used currency in the world and ask that governments put an effort towards ending inequalities.
And with that, we've come to the end of this news brief. For these and many other stories, you can find them on our website at tellusenglish.net. For our viewers in Africa, remember, you can find us on Starstat 461 in South Africa and Channel 539 in Nigeria. Join us on social media. We are on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. Tell us your English. I'm Sonia Gray. Thank you for watching.